what can we do as everyday American citizens to guard against this?
So it's important to try to find platforms that are more amenable to free speech than others. I mean, I think Rumble's working hard to be a free speech video platform. I think Elon Musk has made some significant efforts to make Twitter, now known as X, more friendly to free speech. It's not perfect, certainly, and I've talked to Elon about this. I think, when he took over, we went from Twitter 1.0 to Twitter 2.0. It sort of regressed since he stepped down as CEO to maybe Twitter 1.7. So it's better than what it was before he bought it, but it's certainly not perfect. And there's a need for also new technologies and new ways of decentralized ways of communicating with one another to create these parallel structures of communication, of information sharing, of journalism, civil society. I publish a newsletter. This is shameless self-promotion here. I publish a newsletter on Substack. And for my money, the best independent journalism is being done now on Substack. I'll mention my friends, Michael Schellenberger, who publishes on at a place called Public on Substack, Matt Taibbi, who publishes, he calls it Racket News on Substack. These guys are following the censorship issue very, very carefully. The problems with the growing surveillance state. All of this is on their radar screen. So Substack's been a great platform, I think, for independent journalists and independent writers to speak directly to subscribers. And you can monetize it. You can have, a free version. You can have a paid version. So support platforms like this. Go seek out independent voices that are doing good work on these platforms. I think the information is out there, but you kind of have to know how to look for it. And I've been fortunate to discover a lot of these, friends and colleagues now working in this space. I have an affiliation with the Brownstone Institute, and I would say, any of the writers that have published at the Brownstone Institute have interesting things to say about these issues. So that's a good website where you can go there directly, sign up. They didn't pay me to say that, directly sign up for their email list. And then obviously seeking out podcasts and conversations like yours. I mean, for my money, the most interesting conversations are happening on long form podcasts, not on the evening news where you get a 10, 15, 20-second soundbite to try to unpack a complex and important issue in American public life. And Americans are voting with their feet. The push before the advent of podcasts was everyone has a short attention span. You gotta package it up and spoon feed it to people in little tiny sound bites. And I think no one expected that someone like a Jordan Peterson or a Joe Rogan, who would have a 3-hour conversation with an interesting person, would become actually not just popular, but more popular. I mean, more listeners than CNN and Fox and MSNBC. So fortunately, we've seen the rise of some of these kind of new medias that are really opening things up. And I think that's precisely why we're seeing a censorship crackdown now, because that's a threat to the establishment. That's a threat to the elites.
Yeah. Well, and it's not funny. I don't mean to say it's funny, but I always call that the silver lining, because what they tried to do to us in COVID was to physically separate us, lock us apart from each other. So we're not meeting at the playgrounds or at the coffee shop or in our offices sharing, oh, I got COVID. This is what happened. My mother-in-law got it. This is what happened. This is what worked. So they literally physically kept us apart and prevented us from sharing information and our experiences so we could try and navigate what was happening. But then we all turned to social media, and then the actual weapon that they were using against us, we were able to turn on them, and now empowered us to expose so much. So I totally agree with you. I was shocked. I'm shocked that people listen to this, to even our shows, especially being a newer, podcast. But people know that they've been tricked, and they're craving, especially on this higher, like these constitutional law issues, these medical issues, these ethical issues. They appreciate the conversation and being talked all the way through it so that they can better understand and then be able to apply that in their own lives. And I think people are really craving being informed, and they realize that for the last couple, I don't know how many years, you probably have a better estimate than I do, we've been pretty lazy intellectually, and I also morally, I think, and ethically. And I think people see what almost just happened to us and are prepared, arming themselves with tools, information, and knowledge so that doesn't happen to us again. So
and most ordinary Americans, they have a nose for BS. They can sort of sniff it out. Well, I may not be an expert in virology or epidemiology, but I can spot a logical contradiction. I have, I still have common sense and rationality. And I know that any policy that says when I walk into the restaurant, I should be wearing a mask. And as soon as I sit down at my table, I can take I mean, I'm not an expert on infectious disease, but I can see that obviously makes no rational sense. And people are tired of being lied to. So I agree. They are hungry for meaningful information that takes them seriously. We're all intelligent, rational people that want to do the right thing for ourselves and our families, and just stop propagandizing me. Stop talking down to me. Stop telling me to shut up because you're not an expert.
Right. Well, but the problem is that the government has an uncanny knack or ability to identify something that is so personal to large swaths of the community of society to override that rationale. And that's what we saw with COVID, is people were so overridden with fear that they didn't listen to their guts. They didn't listen to their hearts. They knew that this was wrong. They knew that leaving their, grandparents alone, isolated, just in general was wrong, but certainly during the pandemic. They knew that masking children, they saw the data, they refused to look at the data. We see that right now with the Israel-Palestinian conflict. I think we see that with gender affirming healthcare, in quotes, because that's not what it is. But they are able to prey on our human insecurities, our human uncertainties, and just our fallibility, just our religion, our sex or gender, So I hear you, and I will tell you that October 7th for me as a freedom fighter was probably one of the most painful days. And this sounds like so insensitive because I'm not Jewish. I'm not Muslim. I've never been to Israel. I've never been to Palestine. But as a freedom fighter, to be able to see what was happening that day on a global level and to see the reaction, I was like, they found the next hook.
That's right. It was a wedge.
Look where we are again.
It was a wedge. Yeah.
It was a wedge.
Very, very effective.
It was heartbreaking for so many reasons. But to see that despite everything we've been through the last 4 or 5 years, we actually hadn't made as much progress as a collective, as humanity, as I had hoped. That was really painful. And it's not anybody's fault. That is a horrible, horrible thing that happened. But anyways, I'm just saying we need to be conscious. It's a conscious effort.
It's a conscious effort. It's constant work to have the intellectual humility to say, I may be feel very convicted on this issue, but I still have something to learn from everyone, right? And to be able to have civil dialogue and civil conversation with people with whom I have profound disagreements, because there's going to be something that I can learn from that person. They may not persuade me to go over to their other side on this or that issue, but they do have something meaningful to say. And I have something meaningful to say to them as well.